security's been activated. It's locked tight. Well, only one way to go. Forward!
Right.
Ich hasse es. Okay. Ich dachte, das ist eine Kiste zu zerstören. Entschuldigung. Was haben wir denn noch so gefunden?
It's soothing watching the flames. Hey, is this?
Ah, die Geschichte geht weiter mit den Glöckchen.
Everyone in town called the old writer who lived in this house a weirdo. The house was old-fashioned, and the walls seemed weighted with history. So little care and upkeep had been done to the place, it wouldn't be a stretch to call it a dump. The front door was always open, and not because it wasn't locked, but because there was no lock at all. Some would think that an invitation to burglars, but the place was such a mess that you'd lose all interest in stealing the moment you stepped inside. The house reflected its owner, an oddball, aged and in disarray. And this day, that oddball writer was laying in the middle of his hallway. For a moment I thought he was dead, but every once in a while, his finger would twitch, betraying signs of life. The bones in the back of his hands stood out, gnarled under paper-thin skin, but his slicked back hair looked young. The black framed glasses he habitually wore had stayed on, even after his fall. He'd probably worn those glasses so long that they were a part of his very being. And there he lay, weaving my way through the filth and the clothes and the furniture. I entered the house, and he didn't even notice.
Bisk!
He called my name in a gravelly voice. With each call, my body would shiver with surprise, and the bell would ring. It was a refreshing sound. The old man must have heard it too. He immediately leapt off the floor and turned his back to me.
Not another step.
The man almost spat out.
I don't want you coming near me.
And with that, he went back to the mountain of papers that buried what might have once been a desk. His hand never stopped moving as he scratched at his head. Believe it or not, he'd call out, drop to the floor, and do it all again. I was thoroughly baffled. And so I sat in the corner of the writer's room until night fell. The bell at my neck continued to tinkle lightly as I tilted my head. Can this man truly be Bisk's family? I came to check up on him every few days, but each time he'd act just as wild and nonsensical. When he wasn't throwing himself on the floor, he was completely immersed in his writing. Disturbed by his unnatural behavior, I tried my best not to allow my bell to ring, and so I stayed nestled in the corner until I finally heard the sound of a pen sliding across the desk.
Phew.
A loud sigh was immediately followed by a loud thud. He'd fallen backwards off his chair.
Finally, finished.
The way he breathed those words sounded so unlike his usual crazed tone. I lifted my head, and the bell chimed to him gently. With his back still on the floor, he let out a low moan.
Oh, Bisk. Bisk, my dear.
I was sure he'd yell at me to stay away again today, but instead he just lifted his thin, ghost-like arm and gestured to me. Just as I neared him, with my careful, steady steps, he suddenly grabbed me by the scruff of my neck and dragged me down with him. At first, I went stiff with fear. But then, I heard the beating of his heart. He gently closed his eyes and petted me.
Bisk, is that you? You've gotten so much thinner since I last saw you.
His bony hands were rough, but he petted me softly. As I sat there, unable to answer, the beating of his heart became softer and softer. He continued to coo at me gently.
Finally, I'm able to sleep.
His last words sounded more like he was speaking them from a dream. As the hand on me never wavered, I finally realized. My doubts were cleared. I understood now that this was the orange-belled Bisk's family. And as I gently closed my eyes, I could feel the sound of my own heartbeat, slowly melting free of its ice. I am Bisk. Bisk with her orange bell. The foster child who brings peaceful slumber to the master writer, whom everyone called crazy.
Hatten wir nicht schon Storys mit dem Glöckchen? Bin mir gerade nicht sicher. Wir müssen das mal nachgucken. Es kommt mir jetzt doch so bekannt vor. Da ist das. Da fehlen welche. Okay, es sind viele. Also hatten wir das doch schon ein bisschen gelesen. So, ein bisschen machen wir noch. Oh, da steht wieder was. Kann ich aber nicht lesen.
No boy. Looks like a dead end. Guess he means business.
A dead end?
In other words, we're trapped in here.
I guess this is the end.
Huh? What's the matter? You're a guy, aren't you? It's too early to throw in the towel. Oh, I know.
What is it?
Would you... Well, would you like to hear my story?
Sure.
A long time ago. Long ago, there was a brilliant scientist who discovered, well, the secret of interaction. That is, how humans connect emotionally. The hidden ability to communicate without words. Way in the past, people could have connected with each other using that power. So a bunch of really smart scientists got together to study the idea. They thought if they could reawaken this power in everybody, we wouldn't have to use words to understand one another. They concluded that it'd make the world a better place. There were wars at that time. People argued and fought over little things and big things alike. Everything was a point of contention, and people grew tired of it. The whole world was unanimous in supporting the project. Using a machine they called Glass Cage, humans sent a signal around the world to try and trigger the latent empathy faculty in people's heads. This would enable everyone to naturally harmonize with one another.
After that, What happened?
Well, everybody was excited. Now that they could convey exactly what was in their hearts, all sorts of misunderstandings and ill will would vanish overnight. That's what they thought. The entire world was bubbling with hope. Everyone believed it was the dawn of a new era. They believed and smiled themselves to sleep. But then, the next morning, no one woke up. They slept and stayed like that forever. That's how they all died.
And you think it's happening again?
Yeah. That girl? She's gonna be the catalyst for it.
Catalyst?
Her heart will make the connection. And connect with everybody else on Earth. If it succeeds.
What if it doesn't work?
I told you. It'll be worse this time. Not a single soul will escape. And guess what? The first time around, I was the catalyst.
But, Sai, I don't get it. How did you end up as the catalyst?
Don't look at me. I have no idea. I lived a typical ordinary life. And then one day, they forced me to take all these tests. Before I knew what was going on, they decided to use me. They plugged all these cords into my head, made me take strange medicines. It was all very weird. I'm telling you, in all my days, I'd never felt such intense pain. It happened every day. More experiments. They didn't care at all how I felt. But there was this guy. He had a heart. Sometimes he'd slip me chocolates and candy. He'd even stop by and ask me if I was doing okay. And also, he thanked me nicely.
I see. So you and that guy, well, you were like friends.
You crack me up. I mean, I wouldn't exactly call Shin and I friends. If I had to label us, we were... Wait a minute. How'd that cat get in here? The door's still locked shut.
And the exit is blocked with rubble.
Quick! After him! He might lead us to a way out!
Folge Mods der Katze zum Ausgang. Ja, Empathie fehlt leider auch heute noch. Und es wird immer schlimmer und schlimmer.
I found it! The cat's meowing on the other side.
Ja, das wusste ich aber.
If you crouch down, you should be able to fit.
Ja, wir kommen.
Here goes nothing.
Und noch ein Speicher, weil es so schön war. Jetzt sollte es nicht mehr lange dauern bis zu der Stelle, wo ich abgebrochen habe.
I hope I'm not getting sick.
Die ich auch sehr wahrscheinlich, sehr, sehr wahrscheinlich auf Kamera machen muss. Weil ich sie nicht hinkriegen werde, on Kamera. Ich zeige sie einmal, so wie immer. Aber ich werde wahrscheinlich dann mittendrin abbrechen und es auf Kamera weitermachen. Und es ist ausnahmsweise mal kein Kampf. So. Ach, das war das Labyrinth, was ich beim ersten Mal direkt richtig gemacht hatte. Right? Dankeschön. Tschö. Ich bin weg. Gehen wir zum Feuer, nachgucken, was das ist. Vielleicht wieder eine Story. Who knows, who knows? Ich weiß es nicht auswendig. Ich weiß nicht, wo was liegt. Wie denn auch? Ich habe das Spiel zwar öfter gespielt, aber kann mir das nicht merken.
I'm getting sleepy.
Die Anfangskapitel, das ist schon einfacher für mich, aber nicht
Is
die
this?
späteren. Babysocke. Oh nein, wird das wieder wie mit der Kleinen? Bitte nicht.
Though you're still so small, you'll soon be born. So this message is for you. There may come a day when you'll curse being born into this world. You'll wonder what you did to deserve this. And you'll probably have plenty of bitter words to tell me. But I don't think I'll be around by then to listen to your complaints. I want you to know how truly sorry I am. I just want you to believe this. No matter what happens, all we wanted was for you to be happy.
Ich hasse sowas. Ja, unser Freund, aber wir haben kein Geld.
You are my valued customer indeed.
Dein einziger. Mein Freund, dein einziger. Na, Brust. Wir können nicht mehr die einfachen Sachen holen, sehe ich gerade. Nehmen wir mal einen. Und den Speer verkaufen wir. Ach komm, und die Flitsche auch jetzt. Ist egal. Oh, damit kriegen wir viel. Was war das? Nichts hilft besser als Sauerstoff, um einen ausgezehrten Körper wieder in Schwung zu bringen. Die Flasche ist sehr ergiebig, aber zu unhandlich, um sie lange zu tragen. Essensration für Soldaten, schnell und effektiv. Leider haben sie den Geschmack vergessen. Wir kaufen davon eine. Falls wir es brauchen.
Have a nice day!
Irgendwas, das wir hier wegtun können? Nein, wir lassen erstmal alles so. Aber wir speichern. So, den nächsten Speicher finden wir noch und dann machen wir Schluss. Miau. Nein, das endet in einem Kampf, richtig? War das so? Endete es in einem Kampf?
It's the same cat from before.
Ich befürchte gerade Schreckliches. Ja, ja, wir kommen. Keep mal cool. Rechts oder links? Rechts oder links? Tag. Bye. So, geh. Wie viel Platz haben wir noch? Noch ganze 3. Ja, ja. Ja. komme. Nicht miauen.
There he is.
How did he get here in the first place?
Ich hab's nicht geschafft, mich wegzuschalten. Egal. Es endet in einem Kampf. Es endet in einem Kampf? Hi. Bye. Sackgasse. Entschuldigung. Seto. Nix für mich, nix für mich. Gut, tschüss. Bin weg, ich habe keine Lust darauf. Werde ich zwar meine Energie nicht verbessern. Mache ich auch, glaube ich, nicht durchs Leveln, aber egal. Oh, guck mal, Speicher. Das hat sich ja gelohnt. Wenn das jetzt noch eine Story ist oder 2. Wir werden es sehen. Und dann können wir ja beenden. Für heute. Kurz vorm Kampf zwar, aber egal.
I see.
Sparbuch. Oh nein.
To-do list. 1. Eat a whole cake by myself. 2. Share a meal with my family. 3. Visit all the friends I can. 4. Read all the books I've wanted to. 5. Buy the clothes I always dreamed of. 6. Make up with that certain somebody.
The silver bell wasn't a particularly outstanding decoration, but it did ring the most beautifully. I'd always wondered what kind of home such a lovely bell had come from. It belonged to an old woman who lived alone without relatives, in a large mansion I'd never seen before.
Madam, it's time for supper. Thank you, dear.
Madam, the lilies in the garden have bloomed. I've put them in this vase.
What a lovely scent.
Madam, it started raining. Allow me to close the windows.
Yes, and draw the curtains, too.
The old woman was waited on hand and foot by her servants. She'd rely on their help as she sat idly in her chair, listening to her favorite music. She'd even ask them to change out the records. But most of the servants seemed to genuinely adore their employer. But there was one thing the old woman would ask several times a day.
Excuse me, but could you call Chris here for me?
Later that same day,
Oh, where is Chris?
and again even later,
Please find Chris for me.
though normally obedient, this one request was always met with hesitation.
Madam, Chris is already...
The maids would start cautiously. "Oh yes, you're quite right," the old woman would say, cutting them off.
She's not with us anymore, is she? I'd nearly forgotten.
She'd murmur with a nod, but not a few hours later, she'd ask the same questions again. She had them stop her favorite record.
Oh, wherever could my darling Chris be?
One rainy night, the mansion was in an uproar.
Madam? Madam!
The servants dashed through the halls in a frenzy. Finally, one of the maids shouted in despair.
Why can't I find her cane?
Though it wasn't too cold outside, the sheets of rain continued to pour relentlessly.
She couldn't have gone outside, could she?
A chill passed over the gathered servants before they set out. They put on their coats and called for help outside. I tore my eyes from them and made for the rain-drenched town. Amidst the downpour, I smelled the sweet fragrance of lily. In the back lane of a park, far from the mansion, I made out the figure of the old woman. She was surrounded by a crowd who moved and gabbed around her.
Come on, lady, you'll catch your death out here. Maybe you should see the police.
The old woman's shoes and designer clothes were soaked through. A man tried taking her by the hand, but the old woman refused to budge, her face adamant. Fed up with her antics, the men finally left, leaving her behind. I cautiously stepped just into her field of vision, and without saying a word, rang my silver bell. It rang clear through the rain. The old woman raised her head sharply in surprise, her blurry eyes looking at me.
Chris?
The old lady rasped. I rang the bell again in a nod, and then turned around.
Chris, wait! Wait for me!
Her cane clicked as she followed me. I may not be able to carry her all the way to the mansion, but it'd be enough to bring her to her servants. I stopped often to look over my shoulder, to make sure I didn't lose her. The sound of that beautiful bell was a beacon. At last, one of the servants noticed the old woman and shouted, "Madam." As she ran towards her, the old woman bent down to scoop me up and held me, trembling. The servants weren't able to hide their surprise, seeing how much the late Chris had changed upon her return. Not one of them said that I wasn't Chris, because the old woman called me so. The maids nodded in obedience, just glad that their beloved employer had returned home safe. I am Chris. Chris with her silver bell. I'm the tiny, adorable Chris, loved by her grandmother in this grand mansion.
Also, weil ich gerade gemutet war. Zum Glück war es keine traurige Geschichte, eher eine Auflistung, was man kurz vorm Tod noch machen könnte. Genauso wie die Geschichte gerade. So, dann speichern wir jetzt und beenden für heute. Wieder 2 Folgen geschafft. Wenigstens ein bisschen was. Ich hoffe, es war nicht allzu langweilig. Ich habe dieses Spiel ein bisschen weiter gezeigt und wir sehen uns dann beim nächsten Mal. Auf Wiedersehen. Dann geht's los zum Kampf.